Spring has sprung here in the south, finally. It's going to be about 75 degrees today. A beautiful little thrift bed here at the end of the driveway. But all the bees are getting out and getting busy, and things are starting to bloom out. And just thought I'd share with you here just a little bit. We were watching a video past couple days from Guilty of Treason. I think he's out of the West Coast, and he has some excellent stuff. If you guys can get a chance to take a look at it, it's called Guilty of Treason. And he had a very good story on there of a gentleman who was in a tree, was cutting some long limbs off, I think, starting to decay, and he was taking and showing this video. The gentleman had started a little bit of an undercut and then overcut, and the tree limb, because of the weight and the length of it, split, and his lanyard was around it below the cut, which is common. And when the split separated, it grabbed his lanyard and pulled him up into the remaining stem. And he thought very fast. He took the saw, cut the hanging broken limb off, and was able to get loose. But it could have been a very, very dangerous situation. And I've heard and seen a lot of those in the past. And I just wanted to kind of share with you, and you can take a look at the videos there on their channel. But I wanted to share with you just a little bit, and I've done this on some small material because I don't want you to think about the tree limb, the tree, the decay, the hollows, the rot, although that's part of it, and you have to look at those and put that into your planning. But you really want to think about, first of all, the fiber in that location. If you get too close to rot, it could be soft, it could be brittle, it could support weight, it may not. If you get to a situation of real green fiber, especially spring of the year where it's really pliable and tough, then you have a different consideration there. But the edge of hinges and the edge of fiber can pull out and grab a lanyard or cause steering problems. But some people shared with me back several years ago about the concept of fiber and how it breaks, because we were looking at it really from a standpoint of quality. And logging, whether East Coast, West Coast, and I've been all over with it. So, I've cut Douglas fir, I've cut redwoods, I've cut all kinds of different fibers, and they all do react a little bit differently, but they react especially to the notches and the fiber that you cut, the hinge that you leave or holding wood that you leave. All of those things play a big part. So I wanted to take just a little bit and go down through this on just the small pieces with a handsaw. And I want you to think about how those fibers react. A hinge or holding wood, to keep from splitting, has to have a place to move into. And when it gets to about 70 to 90 degrees in a bend, then that fiber starts to break from that farthest stretched end. And so if you understand that, you can kind of start to think through how important a notch is. And so I'm going to show the difference here in some different cuts, whether it be just a straight kerf in the direction you want the piece to move, whether it be a notch or no face notch or kerf at all, and what happens with the fiber when it's starting to be released. So it's quite eye-opening, and that's what people had showed to me years ago, and I find it to be very critical. Whether you're felling, pruning, limbing, bucking, storm stuff, felling trees, whatever it is, it all falls under the same mechanics of how the notch and the hinge work. So if we understand that, then when we get to situations where we've got tricky positions, or we've got situations of rot or decay or strong fiber, weak fiber, all of these things, then it really starts to make it possible to have a pretty decent plan, or at least know not to cut it there. So hope you enjoy it, and take a look, give me some comments back, and we can discuss it on Thursday night saws if anybody's interested. So that's at 8 p.m. on Thursday nights. We have a little live, so if there's any questions on that. What I plan to do with this is to simulate a limb that might be long and angled, and take a look at how the fiber works. And I want you to think about, this is just a small sapling, but I want you to think about the fiber, not the actual situation here. And then it'll give you the opportunity to apply it to different situations that you're in. But a fiber specialist had shared this with us back many years ago, and it makes sense when you try to look at it. So now we've got a straight back cut and a very shallow, just a slide down the face of the fiber. And let's see how that works. So that enables it to go all the way down. Just like the hinge on a door. So now, same limb. We're just going to put just a small undercut, and then a back cut. Basically same thickness of material in between. So it goes over so far, and now it has to stop. You see, it can't move like this one does. Same amount of material, but it can't move very far. So when you have weight on that particular branch going out, when you undercut there, even if you offset right or left, if that closes, it creates pressure, and something has to pull and snap. You see? So we want to think about that. Straight cut in doesn't allow the hinge material or the woody material to actually bend over far enough for the fibers to start to break. It's going to take and start to split, and especially if you have a lot of weight out and no cut at all. In other words, this one is going to kind of snap off. This one's going to allow it to go down, and if you wanted to, you could take the hinge off of it. According to how much of an opening you have is what really applies to that. But it's something that if you don't have something immediately, you'll start to get splits. So now we have just a similar limb, and I'm not going to use any. I'm cutting flat to it. I'm not going to use any type of a face notch. And let's see what exactly happens here. It goes in so far, and now that limb starts to move. And at this point, you can see that a split takes place. Okay, and so it's going to split every time. If you're fast enough with the saw, you can take it off, but the split's going to happen every single time. So here now, a similar limb just across from that one, and we can put the notch in either way, and really you don't have to take that out. You can leave that little tab. And then this works great with pole saw. It works great with chainsaw. And so now all you do is just come in, and you can see I'm not very deep into it, probably about a 30-degree angle, something like that. Now when I cut back, I keep the hinge across parallel to that notch best as possible. And now that enables that to fold all the way down with no splitting. So whether using for pruning cut or limb removal. And, you know, taking off small pieces, you're not going to get that type of a split. But taking off long limbs, it has a chance to split. Now, this is another technique that's been around for many, many years. It doesn't have to go so deep into the circumference of the limb or the tree. But now this you have little or no steering that takes place. But in other words, I would take the saw and I would cut in at an angle here. So I end up, this would be the direction that I want the piece to go. So this would be on the underside. So I would reach over and saw down at an angle. So I've got, in this case, I've got about a ½ inch on this side. I've got about 1.5 inches on the other side. This one now I cut in same way so that I have the kind of a V cut into the material. So if you can kind of see that in this side and this side. Now I do have the ability, if I wanted to, and I'm going to do that so you can kind of see a little bit better, is taking that piece of the notch out on each side. But it's not totally necessary that you do that. If you were taking a limb out climbing or out of a bucket, again, you want to try to have cuts that match. But just this vertical cut down so that now I've got a notch on each side, but just a straight cut down to that position would work. So I'm thicker on the back than I am on the front. So now I'm going to take the back so you can see. Oh, I'm probably going to do it from this side. Maybe you still have. But I'm going to cut in now, kind of straight line from that. So I've got the wide area of the V here, the narrow on the front side. The piece is leaning out to that side. So if I had a limb that was horizontal, or I had a tree with a lot of lean to it, as I start to cut back, what happens is, what causes the tree to split is trees grow in circles. So as I start to cut in, these fibers, and we'll stop right there. These fibers, because the two sides are actually cut through the last years of growth. What causes a split or barber chair is more or less the rounds have a tendency to spread outward as it starts to move. And so you can see in this case that those fibers are able to split out. No direction really, but there's no way that it splits the piece. You can see now the little bit of a hinge is still left on the front, but you really have no side-to-side control because it goes to a point. Look at this little simulation here. Now it's on the ground, and so my compression would be on top and my tension would be on the bottom. So if I put just a straight cut in there and undercut, I'll show you what happens, and then we can stop on this small one and put a notch, just a slide notch. It doesn't have to go very deep. A lot of times people want to go real deep with the notch, and that doesn't do anything except for controlled twist or side to side movement. A hinge is very strong forward to back, very weak side to side. So when you start to think about it, going deep only moves the compression spot closer to the tension area. So you're better off to stay fairly shallow on these things if you possibly can, and especially if you have one large enough diameter to be able to use a bore cut. Okay, so here I've got compression on top, tension on the bottom. I'm just going to put a straight cut in and then start up from the bottom, and we'll try to keep a fairly straight hinge here. And you can see now, as this starts to go down, that notch closes. So that's a notch, but it's just a kerf. So it can't move very far. So if I look at this, it opens. That's where it was originally. Then I undercut, the weight starts to go down, it closes. At that point, something has to twist or split. And that's what you want to try to avoid. Now I'm going to try to take and just put just a little bit of a notch into that position. I don't want any bypass or Dutchman in that area, so I'll clean it up just a little bit. But now let's see what happens here. And so as I go down with this, you can see now it has a place to fold into. When it gets to 90 degrees, it's going to start to break from the back of the hinge to the front. So you can see how now on the compression side I have a space for it to move into. The hinge actually works. And if I want it to go all the way down until it's on the ground, then basically to remove that hinge is just to go right or left and make an offset out of it. But the weight needs to be completely supported at that time, because if it's not all the way down yet, you're still on the compression side, you see? So you want to make sure that it's all the way on the ground, or the top's on the ground or something, if it's a limb up in the air, until you can get the hinge off of it. Now you could continue cutting up from the bottom and release it too in this case. But if you didn't have ground clearance, you can offset from the top. All I've got is just the material of the hinge that was left. But check out Guilty of Treason. Excellent material all the way through his website, and very conscientious planners and cutters in there, and so some very good information. So check it out, and hope you enjoy the video I've put together here. Thanks. Good sawing.